Hi everyone, it's been a little while since I have actually done a recording of something, and I've done some analysis recently that I was kind of curious about, and I figured you might be interested in learning a little bit about it as well. So here we are. I've been keeping a close eye on what sort of things are going on with the old sealed magic box prices. Crazy things have been happening in terms of their overall price, but we're not actually going to be looking at the market update or anything like that today. That's not really the purpose. Instead, I had a question about how these different sets age over time. And as everybody, I'm sure, knows, older boxes are more expensive for obvious reasons. Also, though, there's a factor here of the EV of your different boxes. You'd imagine that the cards in the box make a difference, and in fact they do. But I wanted to know a little bit more about how do some sets age differently than others, and why might that be the case? So I took down a whole bunch of data here, and I did some analysis on it. I'll show you the analysis momentarily. The data, just so you know, I've got sets going back here to 2000. I didn't go any deeper back in time than that, particularly because I took down the sealed box price for all these things. That meant I had to go find a sale. I took the most recent sale on eBay, or I averaged several if there were several. Some of these boxes, they don't sell very often, and it's a little hard to find those data. So getting deeper into history than 2000 was just not going to happen. I also took down the EV of each of these different boxes. I just used the Dawn Glare calculator there. It's maybe not the most precise way to get the EV, but it's close and it's consistent, so that's what I did. And I did all this stuff in the month of September of 2021. So yeah, that's what we've got. So I'm going to show you some graphs, because I did some statistical modeling of these things. I actually did some regression modeling, which is fun times. So what I'm showing you here is really the completely unsurprising result of what happens when age down here goes up, what happens to your box price. By the way, on the y-axis here, I have the log base 10 of the sealed box price, simply because, if you're going to do a regression model, you're going to have some normally distributed data. The sealed box prices are not normally distributed. They're super not, but log price is actually pretty close, and it worked pretty well for this sort of thing. So that's what I did. So what you're going to see is a couple of different colors. Depending on whether it was a regular set, I'm thinking just any of your old standard releases. That includes core sets and all that kind of stuff, versus a supplemental product. And I'm only looking at draft booster style products here. I'm not looking at pre-cons or any of that kind of nuts stuff that's going to behave very differently. I wanted to look at things like Modern Masters, Battle Bond, Conspiracy, that kind of stuff. So what you're seeing on this graph, again, is the unsurprising result. As stuff gets older, it gets more expensive. Pretty clear pattern here. The dots are sized by their EV, and in fact, I have a different plot for you that I think is even more interesting than this one. And I want to highlight for you, though, before we move on, the supplemental products. I don't have any that are super old, because the oldest one really on the list is Modern Masters, which is not as old as some of these other things. But I've noticed that those kinds of products behave a little bit differently. I'm going to show you how that's the case. Now we have the chart of box EV going on the x-axis. Still I have log price on the y-axis. But check out all of these supplemental products. They're all kind of clustered here below my regression line. And in general, there's an overall trend here. As our sealed box EV goes up, our price of that sealed box goes up, and that, makes some sense. Yeah, as stuff gets older, it becomes more scarce and its box price goes up, but even some sets that are quite old don't command quite the high price tag that others do. There's just nothing in there. I'm looking at you, Dragon's Maze. Looking at you. Which is it's maybe an outlier case. But again, what makes this very interesting is take a look at these supplemental products. None of them are like terribly, terribly mega old. But what's going on here? Why do they behave a little bit differently? Well, I'm going to show you maybe the raw data set, and this conclusion is really going to be evident there. So there's an overall trend. As you go deeper back in time, you get to older sets. If you look at the ratio, and that's what this last column is here, the ratio between the EV and the sealed box price. The ratio is going to get really, really low as you go deeper back in time. Let's look at plane shift. Plane shift has got nothing inside the box. The EV is only 16% of the sealed box price, and that's just because the supply is puny. And that trend pretty much holds up for sets as they age. There's some outliers, and there's some funky things that happen in here, by the way. Shadows over Innistrad, for instance. Why are they selling for $200 a sealed box when there's nothing in there? And I'm not going to go off on that. But here's the deal about our supplemental products. Here's where things get interesting. Even as these things age, their EV doesn't deviate from their sealed price all that much. Here's original Modern Masters, 8 years old. The supply cannot be very high, and you can still get a box of it for $450. The EV is $327. If this was a standard legal set that was commanding this sort of a price tag, 8 years old, 2013, I would be expecting a way higher price tag than it really is. A lot of these supplemental products essentially seem to have a sealed box price that's determined mostly by their EV, not by their age. What does that mean? Well, it means, if I come back here to the old age graph, as these supplemental products get older, I don't necessarily see their price going up in the same way that all these other sealed boxes do. Even as the supply gets pretty low, just age by itself, I don't think is going to matter all that much. What's going to matter a whole lot more is what's the quality of the cards in that box. What are you going to get maybe if you crack that sucker open? Now obviously if they don't reprint some of those cards that are in those sets for a long time, the price can get pretty inflated. I mean, some of the EVs on some of these sets, right, are really, really high. But beyond that, just waiting on them, just sitting on them, they're just not, I don't think they're going to age quite like your standard legal sets. Maybe that means they're not going to, but well, I'm second guessing my claim there, but this is my analysis so far. Again, I don't have anything that's over 10 years old, so maybe things will change. Maybe the patterns won't hold up. And when things like Modern Masters, the original edition, get really old, we'll see a big difference. But thus far, we are seeing them follow a very different sort of trend, which is pretty amazing. So, those are some of my findings today, some of my interesting analysis. There's lots more stuff to mine out of this data set. If you've got any questions that you'd like me to explore, just let me know, and I'll poke in it. Hope you learned something here today.